So the Russians are nervous, and they're showing us every day that they're nervous. In the last 2 days, I've been showing you thing after thing after thing about how they're in panic mode. They really are. Look at this. They're blustering, and there's a reason that they're blustering. Here, Putin visits the command center of the special operation in Ukraine, and Chief of Staff Gerasimov provides a briefing where he's lying about the field situation. Siege of more than 10,000 from Kyiv forces, 5,000 soldiers besieged in Kupiansk, 5,500 besieged in, this is their word for Pokrovsk. I showed you this morning that the one in Pokrovsk, they're not really surrounded like they said, or encircled. Now here we can also see this is Kupiansk, and it's not encircled either. Like there's, if you call this encircled, this one little wing of it, I mean, that's not it at all. This would have to all be encircled to be encircled, and it's not encircled, but they're putting on a big show. Now, Gerasimov is saying this, and I showed you what he said this morning. He's saying this for a reason, and this is a really important thought here, what this commentary. Gerasimov triumphantly reported to Putin today that 31 Ukrainian battalions have been encircled in Pokrovsk and 18 battalions in Kupiansk, which Gerasimov already proclaimed encircled back in August. The question is, and this is really important, is Gerasimov lying to Putin, being overly optimistic, and therefore affecting the Kremlin's political calculations? Okay, so in this one scenario, in this first case scenario, he's not telling truth up the chain, and then Putin's going to make miscalculations. Or it could be this. Or is Putin aware of the true situation, and it's all a show for the masses? That's a whole different picture. Like, they all know it's bluff, but they're trying to project this like we're in charge, we're inevitable, you can't possibly win. That's another scenario. Okay, Russian military analyst on the claim, quote, enemies have once again infiltrated Comrade Gerasimov's entourage. Okay, I don't know which it is. Tell me in the comments below which you think it is. Is Gerasimov lying to Putin, or is Putin putting on a show through Gerasimov reporting this? I don't know which it is. Okay, Russia claims now, this is part of the same Gerasimov-Putin show, Russia claims that it has conducted a test of new nuclear-tied cruise missile, the Bereshvesnik, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, on October 21st. According to the Gerasimov, the missile flew 14,000 kilometers and showed it was capable of bypassing the air defense system. Putin called Russia's nuclear forces the most powerful in the world. Well, of course he's going to do that. Even if they're not the most powerful in the world, he's going to call it that. So again, it's a show of force. It's trying to, okay, now what's happening here is like what an animal does when it's concerned about, or it's afraid, it starts to puff up. A cat will do this, for example. But when you have to do this show of force, like I've never met, and I've been in the martial arts for years, but I never met a black belt who was like trying to do this. The black belt is just going to be cool and calm. Like I've met special operators in the military. They're scary how calm they are, right? I mean, they're not like, man, I'm gonna do this to you, right? They're not doing that. But that's what the Russians are doing here in this kind of picture. Okay, so the Russians, the Putin claims to have tested a Bereshnik nuclear missile that has no analogs in the world. It's like when they were talking about a Rishnik, which is really just a repackaged missile that they already had. It's not like brand new. Okay. Same kind of stuff. Here's a propagandist talking about this. Kyiv, this is not our backyard. This is the heart of Russia. The heart of Russia. Rus was baptized there. Our culture and faith came from there. Many things started from there. So I believe that Vladimir Vladimirovich should initially have warned them, guys, you either get rid of your stinking javelins, get rid of your advisors, or we will simply kill you. It's always this bluster with them. They're always talking like this. And a strike should have been carried out back then, and the whole flow of weapons went through. It's talking about Poland. We should have hit then, maybe not with tactical nuclear weapons, but hit for real. When 90% of the flow of weapons goes through theater operations through Poland specifically, that should have been razed to the ground. They're always trying to talk in this really overly tough language, like we're just going to destroy them. Again, it's like the cat, which is puffing itself up. Back then, you see, it could have been done back in the summer of 2022, and then our Western European NATO partners would have shut their tongues up the blank and gone to negotiate. Again, I've never met a black belt that was like, yeah, I have to talk tough to you. I have to prove to you, yeah, you want some of this? They don't say you want some of this. Just like, all right, well, what do you want to do? It's a whole different way of operating, and this is where they are. This is why you know they're scared. Okay, Russia is amassing nuclear weapons and attack submarines in the Arctic Circle as it prepares for war with NATO, Norway defense minister has warned in Telegraph reports. Quote, Russia is building up on the Kola Peninsula, where one of the largest arsenals of nuclear warheads in the world is located. Where is that? This is the Kola Peninsula. It's just above like about as far as you can go in Russia, right next to Finland. Okay. And Putin was trying to gain full naval control over the Arctic region so that he could block NATO allies' access to two key shipping routes that would help resupply Western forces in wartime. Again, another quote, even though Putin is losing heavily in Ukraine, he has lost 1 million soldiers. The Northern Fleet is intact, and they are developing it, unquote. Even before the latest expansion, the fleet had at least 16 nuclear-powered submarines and a hypersonic missile called the Zircon, which travels 8 times the speed of sound. Along with the United States and the British government, Norway is watching this 24/7. Melting ice caps are now opening new shipping routes that could have travel distances like cut in half travel distances between Europe and Asia, but also spark competition for control. Putin needs to establish what is called a bastion defense. He needs control of the Bear Gap to make sure that he can use his submarines and Northern Fleet, and he wants to deny NATO allies access to the Goik Gap. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that one right. Giuk Gap. That is the Goik Gap between Iceland and the United Kingdom, this area, and between Iceland and Greenland. Okay. Tensions between NATO and Russia are rising after recent Arctic military exercises and sightings of Russian spy ships. In May, the UK announced joint efforts with Norway to counter Russian control in the Arctic. So they're not only saber-rattling in one place, but then you have the military tensions here. And it's not lost on me that Kirill Dmitriev while he's doing his propaganda tour in the United States, he informed U.S. leadership about the Burevestnik missile test, claiming that Russian delegation is trying to convince Americans that pressuring Russia is futile. Yeah, it's the puffing up. It's the I'm so much bigger and look at me. He also asserted Russia's economy is in very good shape. And, if he's going to, honestly, Russia's economy is in good shape. If he's going to lie about this part, that Russia's economy is in good shape, why wouldn't he lie about this part, about what their actual abilities are? If you're going to lie about one thing, why wouldn't you lie about another? Okay. Meanwhile, as part of his charm offensive, Kirill Dmitriev hands a representative from Florida, Anna Polina Luna. She's the Republican that I was showing you the other day that was just singing Russian praises and talking points, a book titled Great Words of a Great Man. You can see the great man referred to right there on the cover is, Putin. And she's very excited about this. Oh, it's a great gift. Okay. Kremlin spokesperson Peskov does not believe that Ukraine is independently producing long-range missiles, and again, he threatens a stunning response from the Russian Federation in the event of strikes deep into Russian territory. It strikes me that as I'm saying this now, Teddy Roosevelt was the opposite of this. Teddy Roosevelt, the American president, said exactly the opposite: speak softly and carry a big stick. They're doing exactly the opposite. They're saber-rattling and saying it loudly. Okay, congratulations to all of Russia's friends on the successful test of the unlimited-range Bereznik Storm Petrol cruise missile with a nuclear engine and warhead, says Dmitry Medvedev. Of course, I like this. That was actually the most sane thing that he said in I don't know how many posts that I've seen of his. Okay. Meanwhile, what's the rest of the world doing? Well, Trump is raising tariffs on Canada by over 10% over an ad campaign. So what they did was in Canada, I think it was in Ontario, they did this ad campaign about tariffs, and they were just showing Ronald Reagan's speech about tariffs aren't a good idea. I don't believe tariffs are a good idea. I've taught for years that tariffs are a bad idea. It's economically inefficient. Trump loves them. And so the move came after Canada launched a commercial featuring the speech by Reagan criticizing tariffs. According to Trump, Reagan Foundation accused Canadians of fraudulent use of the former president's audio and video without permission. Yeah, but I mean, it's right. It's good thinking. Because of their distortions and hostile actions, I'm increasing tariffs on Canada by 10% on top of what they already pay, Trump wrote on Truth Social. But it leads itself to two questions. One, was it right? I mean, was it actually correct what Trump said? And I think I'm sorry, what Reagan said, and I think it was. And two, why is Congress allowing the Trump administration to really control tariffs? Because it belongs to Congress. Yes, the Congress allows the executive to do it for certain means or for extraordinary measures, but Congress needs to be taking that power back. All right, a little bit more follow up on our previous story. Belgium plans to earn over 1 billion euros annually from interest on frozen Russian assets, according to media reports. Prime Minister Bart De Wever has declined to back proposals for full asset confiscation, partly because Brussels profits from the frozen funds. But I'm not sure that that's it. I think there's more to this story than just that. I think it's also that they don't want to be like the one left holding the bag or looking like the target of Russian aggression when if they do this, when they have the lion's share of these frozen Russian assets. They want to be doing things in lockstep with all of Europe and all of NATO and whatever else, so that there's a united front, so there's no one point of hostility. And I get that. I think that's a reasonable thing to be thinking through. Left-wing politician Catherine Connolly has won Ireland's presidential election as an independent candidate. She's been critical of EU rearmament plans, military aid to Ukraine, as well as the policies of the U.S., NATO, and Israel. So I'm not sure how much more help Ireland is going to be if she has her way. And it reminds me, like, okay, so she's also a left-wing politician, and usually we think of the right wing, but then there's the horseshoe theory, right? The horseshoe theory is this. Here, if there's a center politically, there's the right, there's the left, and, you know, right and left don't see eye to eye, but there's a world of difference between right and left and far right and far left. So here, when we're saying far left, we're thinking, okay, so at least in the United States, we'd be thinking about left as liberal and right as conservative, and far left as maybe and this is not an accurate way of saying it, but maybe progressive and woke and that sort of thing, and far right as MAGA and populist. That's different than conservative or liberal over here, right? So it's just the further you go around, the more that these guys far left and far right are like each other, at least in the way that they operate and act. They have different agendas, but they act the same way, which is, you know, I mean, other horseshoes will show Nazis on the far right and communists on the far left, or that sort of thing. So the further you go down this way, you get toward fascism. Okay, map of Russian oil refineries sanctioned by the Trump administration. 11 of 40 of the largest Russian oil refineries were sanctioned. That's 35% of oil refining. It doesn't sound like much, but it was enough to freak Russia out. And it is some of the larger ones, right? 7 of the 11 sanctioned refineries have already been damaged by Ukrainian UAVs. They've been receiving Ukrainian sanctions. 85% of the undamaged refineries were not sanctioned. So there's a lot of ground that can still be made after these sanctions, which have already been freaking the Russians out. Okay. This story, Russian POWs are being sent straight back to the front after prisoner exchanges. Returning soldiers are not met with rest or medical care, but with interrogations and lie detector tests. Like, the Russians just don't trust their own people. He explained that these exchanges never take place on Ukrainian territory because Russian security services are afraid to enter it. Immediately afterwards, a staged propaganda show begins. Prisoners are dressed in new uniforms over their dirty clothes and film shouting, "Hurrah!" or they pretend to call home. All are then taken to Moscow region to FSB facilities in Podolsk and Morentingen, where they are sorted and interrogated for hours before being sent back into combat. Okay. He noted that time spent in captivity doesn't count toward their service term. Way to motivate. And one soldier who spent 14 months as a POW was told upon return that he still had 10 months left to serve. About that. So that's what's happening to Russian returning POWs. When their numbers call it, you wonder if they're like, oh man, really? Please, no, not me. Okay. Meanwhile, another follow-up story today, an estimated 1.6 million Ukrainian children remain in territories occupied by Russia. So we're talking about 19,000 Ukrainian children that have been kidnapped, and then upwards of 35,000 that 19,000 that we're sure of. 35,000 that we think are there. That's the Yale study. And then 1.6 million Ukrainian children remain in territories occupied by Russia. Like, so it's important to get that land back, not for the land as much as for the people that are there that are being indoctrinated by Russia to go and fight Ukraine in 5-10 years. Okay, last story. The city the size of Mykolaiv is drowning in feces in Russia. This is not a joke. Yeah, another Russian city is flooded with feces after corruption and decay left sewage systems rotting for decades. But hey, remember, they're spending more money in Russia in next year's budget than on the military than Ukraine has a budget. But this is happening. So that's where we are, my friends. Okay, thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. What do you think about what you saw here? I mean, I perceive that the Russians are just kind of putting out their chest, trying to look really tough. And I think that's a sign of weakness, not a sign of strength. You tell me what you perceive. Put that in the comments below. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.